Hi, this is Brian with ActiveMelody.com. In this week's guitar lesson, we're going to take a look at a standalone composition. You don't need a jam track this week, and we're going to be playing this kind of gospel-style blues that's very simple to play. When you break it all down, it's just a rhythm, and we're playing some basic chords. We're repositioning them in different voicings up and down the neck, but this is a great example of how the CAGED system works. So if you've ever had any confusion over that, we'll clear that up. We're going to look at 6 chords, 9 chords, dominant 7 chords, all of that stuff, but it's going to totally make sense by the end of this. So I've got the lesson split into 2 parts. In this video, we'll take a look at the first half. If you'd like to watch the second half and download the tablature, you can get those things by going to ActiveMelody.com, go to the weekly lessons page, and do a search for EP378. We're going to be learning how to play a very basic standalone composition. And it sounds great on its own, and it's really no more than just strumming chords. That's the way that I think of this anyway. I'm not thinking of this as some kind of a really complex thing. I'm just picturing chords in different voicings. So this is going to be a great example of the CAGED system as we learn our chords, or we play our chords in different positions, and then we throw in some fill licks to kind of connect it all. But at the end of this, you're going to know how it all works, why it works, and you'll be able to play it. It's not hard to play. So I'm playing this in the key of E, and it starts on the 1 chord, which is the E, and then it goes to the 5. It goes right to the 5. I love that 1 to the 5 thing. And so the 5 is a B7 chord. We stay on the 5, and then we go back to the 1, which is the E. Then I throw in an E7. Now that means we're going somewhere else, right? I created another little bit of tension, so we have to release that tension. Go to the A, which is the 4 chord. Then there's the A sharp diminished 7 chord, which we'll talk about in a minute. Then we go back to the E, back to the B, and back to the E. And that's the basic structure of what we're going to be playing over. But we're going to be playing those chords in different positions. Now it all starts with... So let's look at that first. So this is a fill lick that uses the E major pentatonic scale. And I've talked about this quite a bit, but there's this box you have between the 2nd fret and the 4th fret on the 6th string, on the 5th string, and on the 4th string. And I use this all the time. Those of you that follow my lessons, you know that I'm always going back to this. And it works great over country, it works great over blues, but anytime I'm playing in the key of E, I'll find myself going into these little fills because they're right there between those 2 frets, and they're easy for me to visualize and play. So when I started this, I played the open 6th string, I slid up to the 4th fret on the 6th string, 2nd fret, 4th fret on the 5th string, and then back to the open 6th string. Easy to play. Now the other thing I should mention is you may have noticed that my hand kind of goes back here, and I get a different tone when I do that. It's a much more treble sounding. It sounds like a Telecaster to me, and I was kind of going, I guess, subconsciously going for that sound, like a twangy, bright sound. Remember that when you're playing a lead or strumming a chord, anywhere you strike the string is going to give you a different tone. If you're striking it back here, it's a lot like an electric guitar. When you play on the bridge pickup, you get a much more treble sound versus if you play closer to the neck. It's a more mellow, more bassy sounding. So you can always play with moving your hand to get different tones on your acoustic guitar. So we started with that. Then we go right into the E. So let me show you how I'm playing the E. I'm just playing E, but I'm hammering on with my index finger. And I always do that if I'm playing in the blues. It's just an easy way to blues up your chord. Didn't think of it that way. Easy to do. And you can do it over bar chords too. It's the same thing. There's your E shape, right? You would be now using your middle finger. So when you go into those chords, kind of build into them like that. It's like more like a piano player would do. And then I go to the A, that's where I bar on this 2nd fret, back to the E. Now what that is, that's the 1 to the 4, and back to the 1. You hear that a lot in gospel, you hear that a lot in blues. It's also the Keith Richards move that I talk about, where you go from the 1 to the 4 and back to the 1. And you can use that as a way to fill in when you're hanging out on a chord for a while. So if you're hanging on an E, and and you're just playing the chord, that's kind of boring. But if you throw in, it just kind of pivots on that chord, and it gives it much more substance. It's a great way, it's a great filler. So that in combination with the little box there between the 2nd and 4th fret, you have a lot you can do already just with an E chord. You could just take that and go no further and just mess around, just hang out on an E chord. Don't go to anything else. Throw in some fill licks, and then throw in that little, you know, pivot between the 1 and the 4, and you can already start to be making some good music. Then I go. And what I'm doing is I'm walking down to the B7 chord. Open 4th string, and then I'm going to walk it down chromatically here, 4, 3, 2 on the 5th string. And make sure when you land on that 2nd fret, 5th string, you're using your middle finger so that your other fingers can fall into place to make the chord. And that's something I thought about, I guess, ahead of time as I was playing that fill lick. You could play whatever fill lick you want there. It doesn't have to be what I'm doing. As long as it's in the key of E, and as long as you're landing on that B note, you can do whatever you want. Now you got to get the timing right. Obviously, you can't. It would sound awkward if you went on for several measures, but you could do that. So it's just kind of remember that you can improvise within the confines of this structure, and I love having that. I know that what my chords are, but everything in between can be whatever I want it to be, and it makes something like this a lot of fun. So after I play the chord, then my middle finger goes down to the 2nd fret 6th string, and that's just like a bass line. Basically, and I use that anytime I'm playing a B chord like this. It's like a bass player. I do it over a C chord. You can see my ring fingers moving there back and forth, and most chords you can do that with A chord, and so that's just another technique you'll learn over time, is to let when you're playing with a pick, you can think of it like a bass player. Now as soon as I went down to that, then I went and came up into this position. Let me show you what I'm playing, and then I'll show you how to think about it. So I'm sliding from the 4th fret to the 6th fret on the 5th string, and then I'm going to bar on the 4th fret. I'm going to bar the first 4 strings, play strings 3 and 4. Ring finger goes down the 6th fret 4th string, and then it slides up one more to the 7th fret 4th string. Now that is playing that's another way of playing a B7, just like we did down here. It's another voicing for it. So I'm picturing a B chord here using the A chord shape. If you think of your A chord in first position, slide it up, that becomes a B chord. Now I'm not playing that, but I'm just picturing that as an anchor. And then from there, I can replace where my pinky is with my index finger. There's that bar that I played on the 4th fret. That could be, that would be the G shape, G chord shape, but I'm playing a B chord, right? And so when I went into this, that's just a little variation off of that chord shape, that G chord shape. That's how I'm thinking of it. And so just like we had the box there between the 2nd and 4th fret for the E chord, we have the same thing when we're playing off the A chord shape. In this case, it would be the 4th fret and the 6th fret. You have the 5th string, 4th string, 3rd string. So now think about that. Now you have all these little things you can improvise with off of this chord shape, or this, depending on how you're looking at it. And you have the same thing off of this chord shape. Even if you learn nothing else, you've already learned that you've got your E chord and this little box shape off of your E chord. That would work anywhere, right? Same is true now with the A chord shape. So you could take those 2 chord shapes and play any kind of blues you want. You can get so much mileage out of that. So when I played this, I came up. Now once I played that 7th fret 4th string, then I went to the 3rd string, 2nd string, behind the bar there on the 4th fret. And then I worked in this note, so I put my middle finger down on the 5th fret 4th string, And then we go back to the E, but I'm playing the E up here. I'm keeping that bar the whole time, and now I reposition my fingers, so my middle finger's on the 5th fret 2nd string, and my ring finger's on the 6th fret 4th string. And that's playing an E chord using the C chord shape, but we'll get back to that. Let's go back to this note. What is that? Now that is actually a B augmented chord. So an augmented chord is another tension chord. And that's really all music is. It's just tension and release. So when I played the 5 chord, that's a form of tension. And then we release to the 1 chord. So that's a prettier tension versus that augmented chord that I just played. That's a darker sounding tension, but then it releases to the 1 chord. And once it gets to the 1 chord, it doesn't matter. You're releasing it. So that you can just think of it that way. It's another form of tension when you get into the augmented thing. And all an augmented chord is, whatever your 5 chord is, you play the augmented chord of that 5 chord. That's the tension, and then you release it back to the 1 chord. I'll have to do another whole thing on that, but that's what's going on here. So we have your B augmented, and then I come into the E chord using the C chord shape, right? Think of the C chord down in 1st position. If I were to play it with these fingers, which you wouldn't do, if I slide it up and then a bar where the nut was, then I'm playing an E chord. Okay, so after I come to the E, then I put my pinky down on that 7th fret, 5th string. All right, let's back up from the beginning and play up to that point. So we have... So all we've done there is we've played the E chord, the B chord, and the E chord. That's all we've done. So once we come back to the E chord, then I want to get me back down here. So after, my fingers are all tied up here playing the E chord like this, but I can take them all off and play the open B string, hammer onto the 2nd fret, and then play the open 1 string or the open E string. And I just know of this as another box, kind of like, in fact, it's the same note. So you've also got a box up here between the open string and the 2nd fret. And then same is true on the 1st string. When you're playing an E major like that, an E major pentatonic. So that allows me to get my hand off the fretboard. Now I can play the E down here. And then I go to the E7, and you can hear that's a tension, but we're going to release that tension when we go to the 4. Right? E7, just work your pinky into that 3rd fret 2nd string. Then we go to the A. Now I'm cramming all 3 fingers in here on the 2nd fret. That's because I'm trying to hit that open 1 string. Some of you can do that with your bar there. I've never been able to do that, so I have to play it like this. So I play the A chord and then the A sharp diminished 7 chord. And the way that I'm playing that is this looks like a D chord. So if you think of the D chord shape, in 1st position, if you just slide that up a set of strings and play that with the open 1 string, you're playing an A sharp diminished 7 chord. So that's how I think of getting to that chord. So you have the E7, the A sharp diminished 7, and then we go back to the E, back to the B, back to the E. But instead of me just going E, B, E, I went and came up here just to show you another voicing of it. This is taking the D shape, so you take that D shape, go up 2 frets, and you're playing an E chord now. You're just playing the top 3 strings there. And then we go back to the B, and listen to that. I release my pinky off the 2nd fret 1st string, play the open 1st string, and then back to the 2nd fret 1st string. And that's that same box that we just talked about between the first and second strings. So we have E, B7, and then back to the E. And then we go into the second part. Now I'm going to save that for the next video, where we play the same chords, but we're just going to reposition them and keep going and playing them in different positions, just to give you more ideas. So let me back up. I'll play through this one more time, and hopefully this is giving you some different ideas for how you can play chords in different voicings, and also throw in some fill licks in between those so that you can start to improvise. And really, once you can do this, you take basic chords like this and you're making music. You know, that music at its purest form is just simple anyway, like that. So let me back up. We'll play through this first part one more time, and then I'll see you in part 2. And if you're not a premium member yet, look into it. It's affordable. It's a great deal. I have hundreds and hundreds of lessons like this and put them out every Friday. So here we go.